Hello and welcome to Bend the Knee, a Song of Ice and Fire podcast. I am Sir Matt, the Bud Knight.
And I am Sir Jimmy of House Nuts, and we're going to be ranking House of the Dragon episodes according to you, the viewers.
Yeah, we asked you guys polls over on our YouTube many times after each episode. And so I ended up going through and doing having to do the math to figure it out because it's rated out of 5 stars to see what order you guys felt was the best. So it was a 1 out of 5 star ranking for each individual episode. And then I asked you guys at the end what you thought of the whole season. And actually, I don't think it matched up with it didn't actually match up with the average ranking on the other thing. So I don't know how math works. I don't know how polls work. I just know the individual things, and then I went in and did it. Okay. So
sometimes the numbers just don't make sense, you know?
Sometimes the numbers don't add up, I guess. But I did add them up, and they're right. But here we go. So diving in here, let me get this into my MacBook here. So let me get this in here. So 10 episodes. The lowest was a 4.43 stars. The highest was a 4.73 stars. It ended up being a 4.5 average per episode for the whole season.
That's pretty good. Sounds like the viewers enjoyed it. And that's a tight margin.
Yeah. Oh, some of these are incredibly tight. So at 10th place, we have episode 2, The Rogue Prince.
You know, I was expecting this one to be a little bit lower just for the fact that the pilot was so good. And then on top of that, it was very much a character building episode, a bit of a bridge. And I'm not shocked. I guess one of them had to come in last place, huh?
Yeah, it did. And I remember after when we were doing it live, right? Everyone was like, "Oh man, it's slow," and we're like, "Well, every episode can't be, crazy." That was one of the things I remember, right? So, following the death of Queen Emma, weakened Viserys Targaryen agrees to take a new wife. Meanwhile, Daemon ignores Lord Corlys' concerns about the conflicts in the Stepstone. So that was kind of what was going on in that episode, right? Remember, Alicent goes to comfort, right, Viserys, right, and then people are saying, "Oh, here should be your new wife. You should take a new wife." So certainly an interesting episode.
Not to mention the fact that we got the awkward Viserys and Lena walked in the garden together, which the silver lining to that awkward walk was the fact that we got to hear about Vhagar for the first time. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. So again, it's in last place, but it's still a 4.43 out of 5 stars, your guys' rating for the episode. So I'd say that's still probably pretty solid, to say the least, right? I mean,
coming across, we weren't sure what to expect firing the old bandwagon up for these live watch alongs and live reviews afterwards. We were not sure where we would stand as far as the audience goes, because when Bend the Knee was exploding, it was during season 8 and everybody had an opinion. And, it was very much so that a lot of people did not enjoy it. So we were not sure what to expect just from, viewers. We were hopeful, but it turned out that it was a pretty consistent experience, I think, throughout the season, with a couple hiccups, but for the most part, a pretty consistent show. And it obviously comes through in the evidence of the polls that we ran, which were so fun.
So much fun. Yeah. And looking here, IMDb has this as, I believe, their second lowest as well. So I'd say, actually, looking at their rankings, and I'll try to bring them up, and I guess I didn't piece it together and how it would be ranked. I guess you can, so that makes it easy. So they had this as their second lowest, so we were kind of in line with them. So okay. Nice. Our number 9 spot was episode 6, The Princess and the Queen, which ended up being a 4 point. So here's the difference, right? So 10th place was a 4.43. 9th place was a 4.44. So not a big margin, to say the least.
Yeah, and I know that episode 6 was, most likely going to be one of the tougher ones for us to get through because of the 10-year time jump and the actor switch. Actually, my in-laws just told my wife because they finished the season and they loved it, but they were very confused and they were also very sad to see the actresses switch. Even though I guess by episode 10 they really really like Rhaenyra, so that's pretty cool. But I think everyone knew that it was going to be a tough sell for
Right.
the time jump.
There was also some ringing of the bell in this episode, right?
Oh, how did that not make my top moments?
I know, man. So there was that, and then of course this is actually IMDb's lowest rated episode at 8.1. So still pretty solid, and I would say we're pretty in line, at least with our viewers, was what this ended up being. But yeah, the time jump I think was kind of confusing for some people, especially because I have another poll on our YouTube, and I said, whose performance as Rhaenyra did you like more in House of the Dragon? 15,000 votes, which is 10,000 more subscribers than we actually 10,000 more votes than we have subscribers. So if you're one of those people voting, if you could maybe just hit that subscribe button, really appreciate it.
Yeah, just slap it.
But 58% Millie Alcock, 42% Emma Darcy, which is about where I expected it. And all of the comments actually are saying, loved both, really don't want to have to choose. But if I had to choose, I think she sort of stood out more.
That's interesting because I feel the opposite. I feel I enjoyed both performances, but after seeing Emma Darcy, I much prefer that portrayal.
Their performance, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. I think it was, if I had to say anything, also the episode itself, you have the time jump, so you have now the older actresses and the younger actresses, and then of course you also have the kids have now grown up a bit too, and that one also starts with that cold open birth scene, right? Remember? And then her and Laenor are walking, and
that's a powerful moment for Rhaenyra,
right,
as a character.
Did it hurt? Right? I mean, what
are you doing?
What are you doing, man? Definitely. So interesting here. So okay, so now we have a bit of a jump when we go to number 7, our 7th spot. So counting up here, we have episode 4 at King of the Narrow Sea, 4.49. So a little bit of a jump here in terms of rating. So that means everything else above this, by the way, is also above a 4.49 out of 5 stars. So King of the Narrow Sea, episode 4. Right. So what's going on in that episode? Rhaenyra continues her search for a suitable match. Daemon returns to King's Landing and stirs more trouble for the king. Rhaenyra learns a valuable lesson. So IMDb has it as an 8.5 out of 10.
Yeah, so this is probably my favorite of the first 5, actually. The first half of the season, this is my favorite episode. This is the one that had Rhaenyra and Daemon running into Flea Bottom, and the puppeteer shows going on, and then Kristen Cole gets his, he loses his honor but gains a little something else, and all that good stuff. I really, really like this scene. I actually thought that the way it was shot is one of the reasons why I enjoyed it so much. So this probably would be my favorite episode out of the first half. I'm kind of surprised it's this. I say low, but it's still well rated. But
right, exactly. I mean, literally, some of these are fractions of a point, right? I mean, the difference of 10th place out of the 10 episodes was a 4.43. 9th place was a 4.44. So I mean, you're talking fractions of points. This is a 4.49, and the next spot is a 4.5, and the one above that 4.51. So I mean, you're talking like just the tiniest fractions in between these episodes. So yeah, actually, you and I sent you a message, Jimmy, on Twitter earlier today, and because we had just done our favorite moments of the season, and I said, actually, kind of thinking about it, one of the scenes that I felt was maybe a little more lackluster compared to what we saw in the books is the scene of Daemon presenting the crown of the Stepstones to Viserys, and I think it's just because the art, and I'll try to get it. I'll try to get it pulled up here. It's just a piece of like a Song of Ice and Fire art that's been around for a very long time. So people have used it in thumbnails and everything, and it's just this really awesome piece of artwork. So I'll get it pulled up here. But I don't know. I see that art and it puts me in the mind, and I thought it was actually maybe cooler than what we got in the show.
Yeah, for sure. Because basically, what we get in the show is Damon walking back straight up to the throne, bending the knee, presenting the crown. Nice moment for the show. But in the book, he comes riding down on his dragon. Big, massive, right? Big, massive event. I think it happens during a tourney as well, right?
I think it does too. Yeah, looking at the
lots of tourneys.
Let me get the artwork. Let me get the artwork pulled up here too. Yeah, and so it's just this awesome scene, right? The dragons right here. So it's literally he just flies right here. And then of course, you know, we don't get to see as much of the back and forth between Daemon and Viserys and their sort of the complexities to their relationship, but it was in the book it makes it seem like, wow, Daemon's really coming back around. And
yeah, way more grandiose, right? And I think obviously some things are cut for budget. I think some things are cut to not repeat a tourney or something like this. But if there's one thing I wish I would have been maybe enhanced a little bit from the show, it would be this scene for sure.
Yeah, and I think also too because like we didn't see Daemon, you know, in the previous episode, in episode 3, we see Daemon like, you know, kill that guy who brings him the letter from Viserys. Right, saying, "Hey, I'm gonna." So we didn't have that. So here it almost felt like, wow, Daemon went and won this war, and now he's coming back on sort of good terms. Yeah. Whereas maybe here the moment is not like tarnished, but impacted more by the fact that no, this is still maybe Daemon on Daemon's terms. You know, so kind of interesting scene there, but nonetheless, this scene ended up, you know, being in this episode, and it was. What do we have it here? This is number 7, episode 4, the 7th best episode of the season. Okay, so at the number 6 spot by literally a 1, you know, decimal point here, episode 1, Heirs of the Dragon, 4.5. Which, by the way, let's think about that for a second. Is crazy. That's you know, I mean, you're in the 6th spot with a 4.5 out of 5 stars.
Yeah, and I thought for our viewers in general, I thought the pilot would be a little bit higher because I don't know if you remember that first night when we went live afterwards. I was kicking my feet up in the air. I mean, we were having
300 people in the chat. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was probably the most successful live stream I think we've ever ran, and it was something special, man. It really was because we waited, you know, 3 or 4 years, and to see it actually come to life on screen and it be something that we could be proud of was a great moment for Song of Ice and Fire fans everywhere, I think. And I thought that this one was going to be like top 3 or 4, but turns out it's number 6. It's crazy.
Hey, well, it's just because again, it's number 6 at the one above it is again 1 decimal point. So you're talking 2 you know, decimal points separate 5 from 6 because it's literally that close. And I rewatched it as I was editing the podcast we did on Sunday that I turned them into videos where you and I were talking about our top 5 moments from the season. And I had chosen the scene of Rhaenyra flying in. It's like, it's not necessarily the opening scene because the opening scene, we get that sort of prologue with King Jaehaerys, which is, by the way, sick moment and crazy that we got it. And that's how this whole thing started. So awesome that was even included in the first place. But man, I rewatched that scene of Rhaenyra flying in today to get some pictures of it for that episode I was editing. Man, it is just so cool, especially because the line right before it, right? And it's like 137 years before Daenerys Targaryen, and then boom, and it's just it was such a good. I thought that episode was so well paced, and to even be, I mean, to be a 4.5 out of 5, just in general, of course. So that again, this list is we're breaking down what you guys voted as the best episodes. For this to be everything else to be above a 4.5, that just shows you how just amazing season 1, I mean, was.
Yeah, we definitely got lucky here. I think this is legitimately one of my favorite pilots of all time.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Better than the Game of Thrones pilot?
Yeah, better than the Game of Thrones pilot. Yeah.
Because the Game of Thrones pilot, to be fair, does have like Well, I mean, first of all, to be fair, this obviously can piggyback off the success. It's
Exactly.
a
Bigger
decade
budget.
later, right? Computers, everything's better. The Game of Thrones pilot is pretty sweet though, just because like I really like when like Robert's riding in and everything, and it's like, oh, what's going on? And
It's
then
a very different tone for sure.
right, the ending of that episode though might be better than the ending of this because you're just like, what? I mean, that is you can look at that and say that's the tone for the whole show.
Yeah.
Is Jamie pushing Bran out the
Listen,
window.
it might be
So
time for a rewatch here on Bend the Knee.
it's I think it is.
It might be time.
I think it is here. Comment here. TK, thank you guys for you guys hanging out here in the chat. It's kind of an impromptu thing here, just doing a Thursday night. I know there's football on too, but he says, I liked how the season opened with the council and the current king, then ends with his dragon. It was a cool callback. Yeah, we actually need to do a House of the Dragon rewatch too. Now we can go back and watch it again.
Watch with fresh eyes. Yeah,
exactly, because you pick up on things you because I always rewatched it during the week, but now I can go back and rewatch it start to finish, and you get to see, okay, they went this way because it's going to tie into this. To see the things that they set up throughout the.
Maybe we do an 11-hour, 10-hour watch along here on
watch
YouTube.
along. I'd be down. I could do that.
Cheetos and Mountain Dew and just
could do that. All right, here. So the number 5 spot again, 4.51 out of 5 stars is what you guys voted on our YouTube. So just a 1 decimal point higher. Episode 3, Second of His Name. Right, this is Damon and the Sea Snack. Sea Snack. Well, for some people, he really is a snack, right? Damon and the Sea Snake battle the Crab Feeder. The realm celebrates Aegon's second name day. Rhaenyra faces the prospect of marriage. I think she was looking at Harwin Strong like maybe he's going to be a snack.
Yeah, and Laris is just waiting for everyone to take off their boots around the fire.
Woo.
This episode was awesome. I know that there were some people who were questioning the legitimacy of the battle scene at the end, but for all the spectacle and everything that what it was worth, I thought episode 3 was excellent. And I love that last like one shot with Daemon, no words spoken, powerful scene that cemented him as Daemon Targaryen in my head forever. So I'm glad to see this one high.
Yeah, also I think that opening shot too, right? Of like, hail Prince Daemon, and then of course the dragon crushes him. But it's just so cool, just like absolutely just fire, just leveling everything was just such a cool shot in this episode. Was this the White Stag episode? I think this was the hunt. This was the hunt as that was going on as well. And I think was this the first time we got to see Tywin Lannister? Yeah,
I believe so. Yes,
I think So here comes House Lannister, and he's like such a he's just such
because he's kind of questioning the fact that
Viserys calls him out.
Yeah, Viserys like bite your tongue. Listen here, buddy.
And as soon as he's like, "Oh, I'm from House Lannister,"
everyone.
I remember you can go back and watch it on like the live stream. Just like here we get like rolling my eyes.
Legendary.
All right, let's what IMDb had this episode Second of His Name. They gave it an 8.7. So I think our fans actually ended up being a little bit higher than IMDb, but as well almost pretty in line.
Yeah, it's pretty close. And to give you an idea, Second of His Name got an 8.7. So did episode 9 of the Green Council. And it makes sense because if you think about it, those are the 2 episodes with the most spectacle, in my opinion, and the ones where people are like, I'm not sure if this is actually, you know what I mean? So I'm not shocked that it's not up in the 9s on there, but 8.7 is a great score.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're into the top 5 here. So our number 4 spot, the 4th best episode. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold on. 10. I got to count here. I didn't like count it down here. 10, 9, 8, 7.
This would be number
6.
4, I believe.
No, this is number 5. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. That was number 6 spot. I'm sorry. I counted wrong somewhere. So this is our number 5 episode. Is also episode 5. We Light the Way. with a 4.54. There's a lot of 4s and 5s in here.
Yeah, so this is where I liked 4 more than 5, but
Mm-hmm.
most people, I was in the minority on that. I think a lot of people liked, we liked the way. Obviously, we have the feast celebrating the marriage proposal between Laenor and Rhaenyra, and we get that amazing scene of Alicent walking in the green dress, along with the Valerians making their entrance, which was dope. Get all the Joffrey stuff. There's a lot that happens in this episode for sure.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just now I have it. I put my thing in here, so I know what I am actually saying. Yeah. So this was also the last episode of the younger cast too, right? And I think we that had been sort of not necessarily spoiled, but talked about on Twitter. So we were kind of watching this, man, with that context in mind. And this is the one where Otto Hightower gets the boot.
Yeah.
Right. And we don't really talk about her that much. But young Alicent, I think this was probably her best episode.
I would agree. The performance was excellent. Like I said, when she walks in and she's officially playing the Game of Thrones now, and you're hearing houses walk up to her, just so you know, like you have our backing, and she's wearing green, and that's the color they wear when they go to war, and people had forgotten because they're in a time of peace. There's a lot of little stuff there added in, and also Crispy Cole.
Mm-hmm.
Going to commit suicide and ends up not because Alicent pulls him in. So very monumental episode as far as like how things end up developing 10 years later, and good send off for the younger cast.
I had to check here. Somebody said muted. Is that on purpose? I just had to check our audio to make sure
we're good
here.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. So episode 5, that when she walks in, and then Daemon ends up walking into, just a very, very interesting, just I don't know, really interesting scenes that were that we were getting. And then obviously Crispy Cole goes crazy, right?
Is this the episode where Daemon also murders his wife? It is, isn't it?
Yes, because then he ends up telling what's his name off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Said I'll be getting my inheritance. Jesus.
Yeah.
Dude.
I know. And I will say, did they ever really come back to that? Not really.
Not yet, but I have a feeling maybe when sides are being drawn, like maybe that'll come up, whenever the war breaks out in season 2.
Yeah. Okay. So now the number 4 spot, and I'm with a 4.57. I kind of thought this might be higher, but so the number 4 spot is episode 9, The Green Council, with a 4.57. So it's a few ticks higher here.
Yeah, I was kind of curious if this one would fall down because there was that loud minority that really did not like the dragon through the floor, beast beneath the boards. But
I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, me and you have talked about it. We've defended it at this point till we're breathless and purple in the face, and we love it. So I'm actually okay with this being number 4. Maybe it would have been a little bit higher for me, but a top 5 with a season this tight, I can't complain.
Yeah, I thought the episode was sweet. And again, I talked about it during our top 5 moments. I think Aegon's crowning was super, super cool. It is just a spectacle. All of those swords and just the way the camera work is done in that episode. And you're just sitting there loathing the greens, right? Yes. Which is that's what Game of Thrones is about. When you have the fact that I'm sitting there and I'm like, as a fan, I'm like, I hate this episode. Right? Like I absolutely hate this episode because you're seeing the greens win, but it's good, right? It's such a good thing because I'm hating them as villainous characters, not like season 7 of Game of Thrones where I'm like, I don't like this because it's bad, right? Like this is bad television. It's like watching the Red Wedding. You're like, it's my least favorite episode. I don't even like watching the Red Wedding. Right? Because I don't want to see it hurts, man. It's difficult for me to watch because I feel so bad. I mean, that's when it's so good.
Man, I'm not gonna lie. Whatever, you stick the Conqueror's crown on his head and he's lifting up black. I'm like, man, you know what? I almost made a fist pump. I almost became a traitor that day.
Wow. Well, all those traitorous people in there got what totally
got what they deserved.
got what they deserved. Yeah. Let me see here. Comment here from Robert saying, and I agree, I loved the crowning. I think they put some more humanity into Aegon in the show than there is in the books. He's still a villain, but you understand it a little bit. And I think so too. And I like that, right? It actually causes me, because in the books, Aegon is just kind of a piece. You don't really
Mhm.
get anything about him. Here, in some sense, you I he's not as bad as, say, Joffrey or Ramsay, right? I mean, Ramsay's just a dick, and there's just no other
Well,
way to put it. Joffrey is just absolutely crazy, and he was spoiled and allowed to do kind of whatever he wanted.
yeah, and I think Aegon is pretty evil, like especially because he abused the handsmaid or the
Right.
servant girl, and I would never defend any of that stuff that he did. But the one thing that they were able to do in this episode is make us relate to Aegon for one of the most tangible feelings a human being can experience, and that's loneliness. When he talks about his father doesn't love him, and no one likes me, like no one has. I think everyone has kind of experienced that moment where they're like, is anyone on my side? Does anyone care? And that is something that people can like latch into. So even on the macro, we look at all of Aegon and we're like, man, he's kind of a bad guy. If you look at that episode, and especially him going within the carriage with his mother, I just feel like he is a bit sympathetic in that moment. And that is another reason why this episode really worked for me, because you could see him feel acceptance for the first time in his life. I mean, it's a
Right.
very powerful episode.
Yeah, it was. I absolutely loved the episode, except for the Massaria bit. But which we both said was our least favorite part of the show. But I thought Aemon too. Aemon was very good in this episode, right?
Yeah.
Talking about how he wishes, almost, he's like, I should be king, right? I should actually be the one ruling. Was kind of cool, and I'm glad we got that.
Yeah, and especially in this episode, Aemon's almost the baby face. Like Aemon's also almost the person that out of the Greens, when it's just the Greens in that context, you're kind of cheering. I was cheering for Allison and Aemon a little bit here. Like whenever they send and they do the chase throughout the town or whatever, I'm rooting against Crispy Cole and Otto. Hate them. Hate them. All my friends hate Otto. But with this, it's like Aemon was the baby face of this episode to immediately go into being the dastardly heel of episode 10. Really good switch. Shows that these characters are complex.
Yeah, absolutely. Comment a few more comments here, right? Let me dive into these. Scott says we see a lot more of what's going on in the city and the foreshadowing of bro versus bro civil war going on. Yeah, Eric, that was kind of cool that we got to see that. TK here, can you imagine how much would change if they granted Aegon's wish and let Aemond take the throne because it was better suited? Than the dance would be crazier than it already is. Another comment here. Do you think that Aemond would be a better king than Aegon? More qualified for sure, but would he be better? I
don't
do.
know. I just saw him make a big mistake in episode 10. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say though, I think though, if part of Aemon's thing is he, I think, realizes that Aegon's not really that good, and that he actually should, because remember, he's already in love with the sister wife that Aegon gets.
Yeah.
He probably would be a better king. I don't know that he would rule fairly or justly. It's kind of also hard to say, because I actually think Aegon might not have actually been that bad of a king. I think he probably would have been somewhat like Robert, in that he would have just been like, well, I'm just going to go do whatever I want because I'm the king, and there's nothing, because he kind of does that anyway.
Yeah.
Even though there's like a war going on. And then Otto and Alicent would have really just been the rulers. And I don't even know, honestly, that Otto and Alicent, in the grand scheme of things, if that regime was ruling without the threat of Rhaenyra, I don't know that they really would have been all that bad.
It's a good question. Sounds like some propaganda from Greenside. I don't know how I'm feeling about
I just think it would. I mean, obviously, because they did rule for a long time under, and we didn't really hear of like, oh, there's all these rebellions and stuff going on during the time in between like during Viserys's reign.
Yeah.
It didn't see. It's kind of like Tywin Lannister. Like the books tell us that Tywin, actually was the only thing holding the Mad King off,
Yeah,
right? For the
yeah.
longest time, he was actually the only thing holding the Mad King off. So I think it probably would have been like that. Although I have seen like polls. I will post one, and I'm sure it's going to be like 99% to 1. But who was a better hand of the king, like Tywin Lannister or Otto Hightower? It's like not even close. Tywin Lannister would absolutely eat
Wreck.
dude. It's like not. It's not even close.
Listen,
Like,
Tywin Lannister ended a war.
right,
Okay.
right, yeah,
Otto started one.
yeah. Not even remotely close.
I love this
Okay.
stuff.
Okay, so here we go. So number 3, I actually am a little shocked by this one.
Okay.
To be entirely honest, because now it's we have an enormous jump in our fractional points here. So number 4, the 4th spot was episode 9 with a 4.57 out of 5 stars. The 3rd spot goes to episode 7, Driftmark, with a 4.66.
A 4 point.
So
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I
this
would
was
like.
the funeral, the dark episode where he claims Vagar, and then we get sort of in a way, a callback to season 1, right? Where the king has to preside over kids that have injured each other.
Yeah, and that whole kid scene into the dispute of the family and Allison showing her true colors. I mean, some of the most gripping moments. Like if someone told me that was their favorite moment, like actually, I think me and you may have overlooked that a little bit, huh? When we were making our top 5, because now I'm sitting here like, damn, that was a good scene. Whenever she slices
That was a good
Rhaenyra's
thing.
arm,
Yeah,
that was good.
it was good, but I don't know if it hit as hard as the trailer made it seem like it was going to. Now they can see you for what you are.
It was just so well acted that, like,
Right.
especially when they cut over and like you have the it's clear as day that they're Harwin Strong's kids. Like it's clear they're standing next to Corlys, and it's
Right.
like, come on. And I don't know, that scene has a lot. Also, there's a lot of Viserys there, and we all know that Patty is the man. So I
Oh,
feel like
so
I may
good.
have undervalued this a little bit. I would like to note that our top 3 are all from the second half of the season.
Yes. Yeah,
Interesting.
yes, they are. And I'm surprised at just how big the jump was, because the next three episodes, like what you consider is like a pretty huge jump
Yeah.
compared to. I mean, you have a log jam. I mean, really, you go down. There's with a point, they're all 4.4, going up, and then it's just like a few fractional points that could literally separate you being in 4th place all the way to 10th. But
Yeah.
then these top 3 are like a pretty substantial leap in the terms of, minor fractional points, right? As you want to get in here. So 4.66, IMDb had this at a 9.2, which I think would be their 3rd highest rated episode as well.
Yeah.
So actually, I think we're kind of in line with our fan vote over on YouTube, which all had like more than our subscribers, to be fair, because a lot of these have like 15,000 views. If you guys could just hit the subscribe button again, we'd really appreciate it. But but so it's great. So it's people outside of just our, like diehard Game of Thrones fan base that subscribes here on YouTube. So for me, actually, you know what? In all honesty, this I think is what is towards my like least favorite episodes.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know why. Of all the episodes and the moments, I'm like, oh, I really want to go back and watch that. I just don't. This one is just not the one where I'm like, oh, I really want to go back and watch that.
I think,
So
yeah, I think
it's not bad.
yeah.
I gave this. I gave this like a 4 out of 5 on my ranking, but on my vote for the episodes. I think it is just, again, the darkness, like really, really dark scene, and they filmed it in broad daylight.
Yeah, I did think that was a bit of an interesting that I don't know why you would shoot in the day to make it night. This seems kind of silly, but
Yeah,
I don't know anything though. Like these people
I don't
know
know.
way more than us. So I always like try to default of, well, they probably made
Right.
the better decision, but
Yeah, Damon and Rhaenyra's wedding I thought was cool out of this, and then I do think Aemon claiming Vagar was,
sick.
was cool, but I don't know, maybe it was just I don't know, for whatever reason, this was just not the one I was most into.
Yeah.
So, okay. So our number 2 spot. So now you're talking about, again, a pretty significant jump from a 4.66 average to a 4.7 average, which is crazy. I mean, that alone is just crazy. This is, I think, actually, this is where we begin to differ, because IMDb has this as the best episode of the season, which is season 1, episode 8. And I'm surprised that this wasn't our number 1. And actually, the one above it is actually even more substantially higher. Almost like, I mean, you're getting like an almost perfect rating. But this was like Jimmy and I's, I think, favorite episode. But
Yeah.
the King Viserys episode, Lord of the Tides, 4.7 still is pretty insane.
That is insane, but I cannot believe this isn't number 1. I mean, like I've said it multiple times now, but this is one of my favorite episodes of any
In
Westeros
all of
TV.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
all of
just
it.
incredible. But hey, you know what? I'm glad that people love the next episode even more. I mean, that's great. That's good news. That's what you want, really, when you're wrapping up a This thing, Patty, was so good and such a surprise for me, at least. Wasn't sure how I felt about him getting cast. Not that he wasn't a good actor. I just wasn't sure, right?
Yeah,
And
I'm unfamiliar with
delivered.
him to be. Yeah, I'll absolutely crushed it. This episode was just so absolutely phenomenal. Not only the stuff with him walking in, I even think the scenes of the feast that they were having, there was just so much cool symbolism in this. Like when he's sitting there and he's getting, they're kind of like, putting whatever they're putting on him and trying to get him ready for dinner, and you have like the 7-pointed star like casting light down on him, and he tells Otto, no, I don't want anything, I want to do that. So, and I loved the Vaymond keep his tongue out of nowhere. Like, wow, that was crazy.
Had a little bit of everything in this one.
Yeah, just such a just good episode. Even Luke being an absolute moron, sending sending Aemon to the pig. Like, I don't know why he thought that at all was a good idea. And yeah, talk about F around and find out. And then on Twitter, I will say this was one of my favorite episodes, at least on Twitter. Just the fan response to see what's going on, because I found this Twitter account that's called The Greens, and it's just like it's totally like a meme account, and they're totally just like, we're just all green propaganda. And they posted the shot of Daemon standing there when Aemon, and looks like him might go to toe, and then Aemon walks away. And I remember the post they said, yeah, Daemon was shook, and everyone's like, dude, what are you talking about?
Here's a question for you. I've seen people speculate this. Do you believe that the dinner scene where they're all getting along and Otto is actually like making jokes and Allison's laughing and stuff, do you think that was shot in a manner where it's actually Viserys having a hallucination?
Oh,
I thought that was a really cool theory. I don't necessarily know if it's true, but like people are saying that they never really got along, and it was just because as soon as Viserys leaves,
because it's through Viserys's eyes. Wow,
yes,
that is an amazing. I will say I did see a quote from Olivia Cook saying that the shot of her and laughing is like totally something else. Like, I think it was like somebody on the side. I think maybe even like
it's Otto.
What did he say? He said it's like, I mean, like from like in the filming.
He's making her laugh, and she literally says, "Stop making me laugh." And they use that clip that was like extra
with
footage.
music over it. Right.
Yeah.
I also read that Viserys's crown wasn't even supposed to fall off when he's walking up, but both actors just went for it, and so they just went. It's like, it's so awesome to see sometimes, like, just how like you don't expect something and it ends up being the thing. So interesting. Yeah, so IMDb had this at a 9.4. They had episode 10, which is our number 1, at a 9.3. So just a fraction of a point there. For us, kind of a huge swing, though. This had the most number 1 votes on our entire list from our fan vote, and has a 4.73 average. Wow. So that's like even a higher jump. So as close as all these things have been, there have been a couple big breaks, at least in terms of like you're talking a few points here, but Yeah, so the Black Queen, and I guess I would have to say maybe, I don't know, maybe it was just because we finally got to see Dragon versus Dragon, and it was one of the things everybody really wanted.
Also, just that last 10 to 15 minutes was essentially a monster movie. It was beautifully shot. The music was excellent. And yeah, we see like the literal first chomp of the dance. And I can see why this landed so well. And do you think that there's a little bit of this impact coming from the fact that the last time we saw a Game of Thrones television show and their final episode, it didn't go well? And this
Yeah,
time it was like a brief, everything is going well, but it could all fall apart at the end. But the finale was solid. In my opinion, was phenomenal. And maybe it's just a big sigh of relief and people loved it. And not to mention, I mean, the final scene is very powerful with Rhaenyra's face. I mean, that's a haunting image that mirrors what we saw in the first episode of her face as well. So I'm not shocked that it's high. I'm shocked that it beat episode 8, but like I said, that's good. That bodes
yeah.
well. So
Yeah, that does. I mean, again, the lowest episode, which was the Rogue Prince on our fan vote, and I think I'll even pull up IMDb, but IMDb didn't have a single one below an 8 out of 10. So we were actually quite a bit higher overall, but for us, it was a 4.43 was the lowest and a 4.73. So, I mean, you're talking an absolute amazing season 1
yeah.
for a 4. I mean, to not even have a 3-star episode.
Yeah.
Right, out of 5. I mean, that's insane, and this isn't even 4-star, this is 4.4. So, I mean, really, then the entire season averaged out to be, a 4.5, which is like, I mean, you can't ask for, I don't think there's any show that I can go and look at that is like a single season is an absolute perfect 5 out of 5.
Yeah, not many shows could achieve that. I was actually looking back through the Game of Thrones IMDb to see like where it kind of like started to go off the rails. And it's interesting, like there's some dips into the 7s with season 5 and I think even season 6. Season 7 really strong overall with this is IMDb I'm talking about. And then obviously season 8 had a ton of low ratings. But I went back and looked at season 1, and season 1 of Game of Thrones has a 9.6 episode, which is episode 9. And then it has a 9.4 for the last episode. So it actually had an episode that ties the highest of House of the Dragon in season 1 and one that beat it. And it also never had an episode go below, I think, an 8.7. I might be wrong on that.
Yeah.
So on IMDb standards, they actually ranked season 1 of Game of Thrones a little bit higher, which is interesting because I feel like I think we did a poll right on our channel, and
Oh yeah, we did. Let me I'll pull that up here.
here I have it here. Our viewers, we asked, which season 1 was better, Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, and 63% of you casted your vote to say House of the Dragon. 37% said Game of Thrones, and that was with 17,000 votes.
Which again, hey guys,
Hit
for
the
those of you guys
subscribe
watching, hit the subscribe button, man. That's like 3 times more than we have subscribers, which is just crazy. But yeah, in the comments, there's 120 comments in there, which is absolutely, some people are saying recency bias, and of course, there's obviously
budget.
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff to take into consideration. But I think start to finish, even I think I do actually like House of the Dragon season 1 more. Even although maybe for a few reasons. One, Game of Thrones to me, we've talked about our book rankings. Actually, I don't know, Ez and I did that. I don't know if you and I have actually done it on here to talk about which books we prefer the most, because I actually have Game of Thrones as my second favorite book. I just think it's just so good, and I think it's such a gripping sort of almost single narrative through the journey of Ned Stark that it's just start to finish. I think the second best book in the series, obviously behind Storm of Swords. Here though, I kind of remember going in, but like before House of the Dragon, thinking, man, season 1 of House of the Dragon, like I'm excited for it, and it's going to be Game of Thrones, but the content they're going to be covering, like if you had told me this is where we're starting, this is where we're finishing, before I'd seen any trailers or anything, I might be like, ooh, I don't know about that. Because the context in the book, it's like, yeah, some of that stuff is cool, but I just don't know that it's going to be.
It needed to be flushed out, and we weren't sure how the flushing out would go.
Right. We didn't know that Patty Considine even George R. Martin was going to say it's going to be better than my Viserys in the books. I didn't. If you had told me before any of the castings, like, oh, Matt Smith is going to be Daemon Targaryen, I'd be okay. Well, now, man, right? So just to think about it, right, from like the book context, this block of the Dance of Dragons versus the book block of Game of Thrones, I'd say there's no way. But I think that because this to me is even better than the books, it's like, man, I think I am on that. I mean, Game of Thrones season 1 has some absolutely amazing moments, right? Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
Getting to see the Wall for the first time, obviously getting the wolves, Ned Stark, Rob King in the north, Syrio Forel is, I think, even cooler than in the books. Obviously, Robert Baratheon is super cool, but I think actually I could go back and I could really pick it apart and say, yeah, but this was better in the books. This was better in the books, but the books are more fleshed out. Here, the books are less fleshed out, so it gives more opportunity for the show to shine.
Yeah, I think it's a tougher adaptation. I mean, one of the reasons why season 1 of Game of Thrones was so successful is that it did follow George's template, right? Very faithful adaptation as far as fidelity to the source material goes. So that definitely helps. For me, I actually like season 1 of Game of Thrones a little bit more, and for the simple reason that what George accomplished in Game of Thrones in publishing, right, and in the fantasy genre in the 90s was something that people, David Gemmell had written some pretty gritty stuff, and also Glenn Cook's Black Company was also considered, pretty dark at the time, but George like really took everyone on one way and then flipped it on its head, right? And it was the first time really since Tolkien that I think people felt that grandioso world building happening. So it was just a different feel, right? And it revolutionized modern fantasy in a lot of ways. And then here comes the Game of Thrones show, however many years later, 15, 12 years later, something like that. And all of a sudden, it has now flipped television on its head.
Totally changed everything.
Yeah, and for it to do that in 2 different mediums at 2 different time points is an incredible feat. It has literally changed the way television, I shouldn't say all shows, but shows that are meant to be taken seriously, especially fantasy shows. It's just changed the game. So for me, I think season 1 of Game of Thrones, especially on the budget that they were on, like they had to cut out the battle. Tyrion gets knocked out because they didn't have enough money. And also the pilot was a mess apparently, and they had to reshoot it and all this stuff. So just the feat of getting a fantasy show on HBO to get a season 2 is crazy to me. I also just think the beheading of Ned Stark is so monumental. Like so monumental. So not to say I didn't love House of the Dragon season 1. I did. But for me, Game of Thrones season 1 is
it's to be fair, it's also a much more straightforward narrative, right? I mean,
it's super tight. Yeah.
Because it's not there's not the time jump.
It's a murder mystery, dude. It's a murder mystery.
It is a murder mystery. I mean, episode 1, right? I mean, we started with the White Walkers, right? Whoa,
the prologue.
The prologue, so good. And then we get to go to the Wall and they're exploring the world. Daenerys has her dragons. Khal Drogo is there. I mean, there's a lot, like just even outside of Westeros. I think one of the Catelyn capturing Tyrion too is like the perfect sort of mid-season, like, oh my God. Sort of like, because now you're like hooked. For me, when I actually think of what might be the best moment in Game of Thrones season 1, it's probably Ned Stark. But what's the most important moment? Maybe Jaime pushing Bran. But I would say easily, like, I don't know. Really, if you want to say about it, like, most important moment might honestly be Catelyn capturing Tyrion, because that happens at just the perfect spot in season 1 to keep everyone hooked because that's like the middle, like, oh my God, like you just might have started a war.
Well, there's a cascade, right? Like, and this is something that George R. R. Martin's very good at, but he cascades consequences. So like you have the push out the window, you have the capturing of Tyrion, which then leads to the battle between Jaime and Ned. And obviously in the show, it's a little bit different, but these things kind of compile on each other. And you look back and you're like, oh no, it messed up there. Oh no, it messed up there. Oh no, it messed up there. And you can go all the way back into the first episode. House of the Dragon has this as well. Like I had a lot of people, online saying, and I was one of them, I wasn't sure how I felt about Alicent misunderstanding the Aegon thing. and people were saying that started this whole thing, but not really if you think about it. So many other bad decisions have happened to that point that like it was inevitable to the fact that when Alicent walks into the council room and says Viserys is dead, they all the small council, they were moving ahead. They were going to crown Aegon whether or not she had misconstrued. The only thing she could have done at that point has been not a part, right? Like I'm not a part of this, which Otto would have just locked her in a tower. She's lost. She's went mad with grief over Viserys, and she can't be seen. And then he would have put Aegon on the throne anyways. So, it's one of those things that like it's really hard to point at one thing in either of the season ones and go, that is the inciting event, right?
Right. Yeah. It's also interesting too, because I think one of the reasons I'm loving some of the choices they're making, because again, the text we've talked about this is told to us through Mushroom and Grand Maester Munkin, right? So it's like it's an Archmaester Gildain, so it's totally like this, just a few people's accounts, and it is what it is. But you look at, say, Alicent misinterpreting the dream, then you have Aemond not really meaning to kill Luke, and the dragons acting on their own, because a lot of times that's what happens in war, right? I mean, I'm a history major. I can tell you that there's a lot more that caused World War I than just like Archduke Franz Ferdinand got killed. Right. I mean, but like that's still ultimately what they kind of like teach you is like,
it's a massive moment that and if it wasn't that, it would have been something else.
Right. And everyone was just allies with each other. So, well, we got to go to war. I mean, but it's sometimes it is stuff like that actually happens that causes like, well, now we go to war. I mean, so it is kind of, interesting.
And don't the small people suffer from the elites' little games? Like, I mean, it's frustrating to me because I look back through all the history of war and everything, and it comes down to a couple people saying, yeah, this is worth losing millions. Like, we're going to lose millions of lives for this. We're going to battle it out. Right.
Over totally dumb stuff. And to be fair, I think, they are doing a job with the green side to be like, yeah, okay, they crowned Aegon, which to me is totally an act of war, but they didn't draw first blood. I mean, if you really want to go look at it, I mean, Alicent's side has actually drawn way more, or Rhaenyra's side has drawn way more blood and first blood, right? I mean, Luke attacks Aemond.
Yeah.
And then also Luke attacks Aemond again. I mean, it's his dragon that shoots fire at Vhagar.
Well, hey, that was Arax's decision, okay?
Right. Yeah, I know, but still. So I do think it's cool the way they're kind of portraying this to make you see like, oh man, like this mistake happens and then this happens, and so I think it's cool. But so any things in our rankings here, Jimmy, the fan rankings you find interesting or disagree with, or you think you're pretty much on the same page?
Well, the one thing I feel a little bit vindicated by is the fact that if you look at the top 5, I think only one episode is from the first half of the season. Right? Is that correct?
Yeah. So let me count down again. So from 10 to 1. So again, I'll say that. So 10th place is episode 2, 9th place is episode 6, 8th place is episode 4, 7th place is episode 1, 6th place episode 3, 5th place episode 5, 4th episode 9, 3rd place is episode 7, 2nd place episode 10, 1st place episode or 2nd place episode 8, 1st place episode 10. So some that I think I would have had higher. For me, I almost have episode 1 as like in my top 3.
Oh wow.
I just think it was just such a good opening. And again, you look at the breakdown of some of these. I mean, from 4 to 10, really, that's where the big shift happens. I mean, you're talking, it's a 4.57 to 4.43. So some of those are literally like 1 point. That totally shifts around the whole deal. But I think for me, my top 3 episodes would be number 8 as number 1. And then I might have 10 as my episode, my second favorite. Then I think I'd probably have episode 1 as my third favorite.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty close to what the viewers had voted on for this show. I would have had 4 at 5 most likely, and then I think I would have switched,
and I'd have 9.
Yeah, you have 9 real high.
I'd 9 at the number 4 spot is perfect for me. I think it could go in my top 3. Just kind of depends really how I'm thinking about it. But yeah, ones I think for me, I don't know what it was, but fans voted episode 7 Driftmark is the third best. For me, that's probably down towards like the 8 or 9 spot for me.
Yeah, I would probably keep it right where they had it. The only difference is I would take 8, put it at 1, put 10 to 2, and then change out the 5 spot for episode 4. I really
Right.
liked episode 4. One of the reasons why I liked it is because it was an episode with a ton of sexy time in it, but it was shot much differently than Game of Thrones. And they talked about that in the behind the scenes afterwards. And I just appreciated it. I thought it was really well done. I really liked a lot of the direction in that episode. So I think that I'm pretty close to what our fans voted on. But the thing I found interesting is that the top 4 spots were all second half of the season, which is funny because do you remember the trepidation people had going into the second half? Like, I'm out. I mean, episode 6, and it is the lowest ranked one, at least on IMDb. We had a couple people jump in the live chat say, I'm done with this show. I can't believe they switched the actors. This is BS.
And yeah, episode
like, oh,
6,
man.
episodes. So what it really shows you though is it's not only just the Rhaenyra and Alicent actors with the younger cast. It was really the full when Aegon and Aemond and Luke and all of them age up.
Yeah.
Because all of those episodes, which would be with the older, younger kids, right? Because 6 and 7, right, were the younger Alicent kids, right? Where what's his name, David Tennant's son plays Aegon. That was episode 6 and 7. So 9, 8, and 10 has like older Aemond, and I think, man, it's just that Aemond actor is just so freaking good.
Yeah, all the Aegons have been great, by the way, thus far.
Yeah,
even the little baby Aegon. They've
all been great. Yeah, so really what it shows is now that we have this full cast, I mean, all of those episodes, so 9, 8, and 10 are all above 4.57. So very, very interesting. And going into season 2, I'll continue to say it here. Going into season 2, you have one ultra important casting, and you have to get this right, because the back half of the show, right, like seasons 3 and 4, especially season 4, hinges almost entirely on your casting of this character. And I don't know who they've picked, but man, maybe we could just get the actor who plays Aemond and give him like dark hair and have him show up as Craig Stark, because he's so freaking good. But they've crushed the casting so far. So whoever you're going to cast as Craig and Stark has to be like the most
pivotal,
important character. Yeah. Oh, they've definitely already cast him. Comment here, because they're beginning filming in like early 2023.
Yeah. Craig and Stark is one of the most badass characters in all of Song of Ice and Fire, and they needed to do it justice.
He's gonna be way more badass in the show.
Listen, we got a Baratheon in season 1, and I was nervous because you know me.
It was a great casting.
It was a great casting, and I was nervous, but they delivered. So I have very good faith in the casting choices, and I think Craig and Stark is going to wow a lot of us. And a lot depends on him. So
it's probably going to be somebody we have no idea who it is. We have no idea. It'll be like, I don't, honestly, outside of Matt Smith, I was really kind of unfamiliar with a lot of this cast.
Yeah, which is always fun too, right? That happened in Game of Thrones, right. You know, Macy Williams and
I mean Graham McTavish, you know, but yeah, a lot of this cast I was pretty unfamiliar with.
Yeah, and they all did a wonderful job. They really did.
A question here. Actually, just as I typed in Craig and Stark, will Craig and Stark have a direwolf?
I think they will, because just because sell that merch, boy.
I mean, why not?
I mean, whatever. He could ride one in for all I give a shit.
I'd badass.
I'll take it. He could put a saddle on him.
It'd be so down.
That wasn't in the book.
So down. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, hey, thank you guys all so much for hanging out here on a Thursday night, and if football's on and other stuff's on. And I did drop a half-hour video earlier today, so you can go check that out, as well as the podcast. Dropped a Patreon episode last night. We're going to be doing our Patreon hangout at the end of this month, so stay tuned, because we have so much more content. I mean, we still have to do all of the breaking down of House of the Dragon. We're going to have to come back and just do a direct comparison of a House of the Dragon versus Game of Thrones season 1. That's got to be its own sort of standalone thing. Then we have another bigger project where it's going to take some time, but working on that. So stay tuned because it's going
That
to
one's
be
going
a
to be
lot of
fun.
fun.
Yeah, one's going
That
to be
one's definitely going to be fun.
Probably the biggest.
So with that, guys.
So I was to say probably the biggest bend the knee project in recent memory, I would say.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. So with that, as always, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. Stay tuned for a lot more Song of Ice and Fire content. And hey, season 2, we know we're going to Winterfell in House of the Dragon. So with that, winter is coming.